Today we're going to be looking at how did Jesus show his power over death, and we're going to see him do this through the daughter of Jairus. We start in Mark chapter 5, verse 21 and 22. When Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. And that's something we see happen a lot, is Jesus being surrounded by people. Then one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. So Jairus was a leader in the synagogue, came up to Jesus and fell at his feet. So he was a ruler, he was very important, and yet he was bowing down to Jesus. We see his request in verse 23. He pleaded earnestly, so that he was begging at his feet. My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live. So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed around him. So Jesus immediately went with Jairus to heal his daughter. And then we see verse 25 to 34. And a woman who was there had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, Who touched my clothes? You see the people crowding around you, his disciples answered, and yet you can ask, Who touched me? But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear told him the whole truth. He said to her, Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. So this woman had so much faith that she knew even if she just touched Jesus' clothes, she'd be healed. And Jesus said, Go in peace. He gave her that ultimate reassurance. We then see Jesus in verse 35. While Jesus was still speaking, some people came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. Your daughter is dead, they said. Why bother the teacher anymore? So now Jairus found out his daughter is dead, saying, Jesus, his servants are saying, Jesus isn't going to help anymore. We then see what Jesus said. Overhearing what they said, Jesus told him, Don't be afraid, just believe. And this would be something that would be very hard to do, is you found out your daughter just died, and for Jesus to say, don't be afraid. That's something I've never experienced, but I imagine is a very scary thing. Jesus promised, though, to heal Jairus' daughter, even though she was already dead. Now we see what Jesus said about death. In verse 37, he did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue leader, going ahead. So we know the people with Jesus, it's Jesus, Peter, James, and John. And we're going to see these disciples be with Jesus a lot of the time in the New Testament. So Peter, James, and John. We then see in verse 38, when they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw a commotion, with people crying and wailing loudly. So there's already a lot of people at the house crying, sad, because this little girl had died. He went in and said to them, Why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead, but asleep. So Jesus compared death to just sleeping. And he even said that right to them. Why are you worried? She's only sleeping. How did Jesus help Jairus? So the first thing we see, Jesus said, the girl's not dead, but asleep. They laughed at him. So looking at verse 48, but they laughed at him. So right away we see that they don't believe Jesus and what he says. We then read the rest of verse 40. After he put them all out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him and went in where the child was. So this was just so that there was witnesses. So we have Jairus and his wife, and then Peter, James, and John as witnesses. He then took her by the hand and said to her, Talitha koum, which means, little girl, I say to you, get up. So he told the little girl to get up, even though she was at this point 10. Immediately, the little girl stood up and began to walk around. She was 12 years old. At this, they were completely astonished or surprised. He gave strict orders not to let anyone know about this, and he told them to give her something to eat. So Jesus told the little girl to get up, and immediately she stood up and began to walk around. And Jesus told them, though, to not tell anybody about this, even though people already knew she was dead, so they were going to find out. But Jesus brought Jairus' daughter back to life. So there in the room, we've got the little girl's mother, Jairus, and then the 3 disciples. Jesus showed his power over death by raising Jairus' daughter from the dead. As we jump into this worksheet, it's called Something's Missing Here. You are going to, so it says you will notice that the vowels in each answer are missing. Put vowels in the spaces to correctly complete the words. You will also notice that some of the consonants are circled. These circled letters will help you with answer 30. All right, as we go through, Jesus blanked over by boat to the blank side of the lake, where a large crowd blank. As we can go through, we know that he crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, where a large crowd, and we know when a crowd comes together, they're gathered. Just noticed I missed my name, so I'm going to make sure that's up top before we go on. All right, continuing on, blank, one of the rulers of the blank came there. I know that our story, Jairus, was one of the rulers of the synagogue, so that would make sense. Jairus is Jairus, and then synagogue. They have Y being a vowel. Came there. Seeing Jesus, he pleaded earnestly because his blank was blank. His daughter was dying. Continuing on, Jesus went with him. On the way, while Jesus was still blank, while he was still speaking, some men came from the house of blank. They came from Jairus' house. They said, blank, your blank. Ooh, I just gave you the answer, your daughter. So, your daughter is, and we know that she was dead. Why blank the teacher anymore? And they felt like they were bothering him, so why bother the teacher anymore? Ignoring what they said, Jesus told them, don't be blank, just blank. He told them, don't be afraid, just believe. Oops, sorry, that should be an E right at the end. Just believe. This one is a little bit weird. It's not showing up the best I can or best it can. Jesus did not let anyone follow him except then those three disciples that went with him: Peter, James, and John. When Jesus came to the home of the man he saw a blank commotion, a big, great commotion, with people blank. Sorry, I keep giving you guys some answers. People, and then they were wailing, which is like loud crying, loudly. Jesus told them the child was asleep. And then their reaction, but they blinked at him. I'm going to let you guys do this part on your own, and then it's telling you to write the circled consonants below. Just go in order. So starting here, we've got R, then W, and then just going down. So R, W, then I see S, J, P, S, S, R, H, going down. There's a D, another H, V, and T. So right now, just so you know, there's not obviously a word right here, but it says now use them to fill in the blanks below. The sentence will tell an important truth from this lesson. So it does not go in order. So I will help you out with some of this, but it's telling us what Jesus has power over. So I'm just going to do the first couple, and then I'm going to let you guys take over. I'm going to cross them out as I use it so I know that Jesus. So I'm going to cross out a J, S, and an S. Has, cross off a and an S again. And then he's got power over. So I need to cross out the P, W, R, and then the V and the R. And I want you guys to fill out that last word and then the rest of these up here. And then you are all set for your lesson.